up here.
No, we're good.
We're good.
So we'll just, maybe. Set this up. Who knows? Probably should have brought a tripod, but I didn't do that. Okay. Well, we'll just get situated right here. All right, we're live at wonderful Osteria, which, if I'm saying that right, is an oyster house. Got my Diet Coke here. My mom says I should be ashamed that I'm a fitness coach drinking Diet Coke, but want a little bit of caffeine, not too much. Both of us got the same meal. It is a amazing camarones, which is shrimp, and a little queso with some steak, a little Tex-Mex action.
We're going to see if Alex will actually eat a flour tortilla.
Yeah, jump in, Ryan. Say hello.
We'll see if Alex will actually eat a flour tortilla if it messes up his macros for the whole week.
No, because as long as it's mostly protein, which it is, we should be fine. So I guess before, we're meta topic is dialing in, but before we get there, we were talking about youth sports. And your kid, how old are your kids now?
7, 5, and 2.
So 7, that's old enough for parents to be starting to get delusional about their kids and their kids' ability on the field. Tell me about what that's like as a parent who's actually played travel baseball, has friends who've gone through the circuit. You have a pretty good understanding that it isn't all it's cracked up to be, but I would imagine that a lot of the other parents don't know that yet.
Yeah, so a couple of things. I will say the amount of parents living by
great. What?
The amount
Ryan hasn't had this, but this is.
I haven't dove in yet. I'll dove in just a minute. The amount of parents that live vicariously through their 7-year-old is like a travesty, in my opinion. I coach my kids' teams. We have a little travel team in the fall because the All-Stars stay together and play. But again, 7 and 8-year-old kids. And these parents, I have to remind them all the time, the Astros are not recruiting your 7 and 8-year-old. They want to play every weekend. They want them to play extra games, practice 4 nights a week. I'm like, they're 7 and 8. The research overwhelmingly shows that multi-sport athletes, at least until they're like 15 or 16, are going to perform better, have a better chance to go pro, etc. So, yeah.
Well, this is one thing that I tell parents. I don't have kids who are old enough to be playing organized sports yet, but if you want your kid,
awesome.
If you want your kid to get playing time as an amateur athlete, there's a couple ways you can do it. You can have that kid play year-round and probably overtrain in a specific sport. Or you can have your kid just be the fastest person on the field. And if your kid's the fastest person on the field, like every coach is going to give him a chance to show him what he's got when he's 7 years old.
Which is cool for me because my son is usually the fastest one on the field, which is nice for him because he also is 41 pounds, which is not even on the 1%.
Wait, 41 pounds? He's 7?
7. He's not even on the 1% of BMI.
Has he eaten? When was the last time you ate a meal?
Yeah, feed that kid all the time. He has 2 dinners every day. His our protein dominant dinner, and then he usually eats 2 bowls of cereal before bed. Because at his size, any calories is a good calorie, in my opinion.
That's crazy because we got a 4-year-old girl in our house, and she's 39 pounds.
Yeah. We have a kid on our team he's 41 pounds, and we have another kid on our team who just turned 8, who's 120 pounds. So there's your he plays first base, obviously, but there's your spectrum that we're working from. But yes, I tell him all the time, speed doesn't slump, just put it in play and be fast.
Okay, so, you grew up we both grew up, I'm not going to say Ryan's a rich kid. We both grew up in fairly comparable neighborhoods in different states. Woodlands, Texas that's not to say everybody in the Woodlands is rich, but it's a fairly well-off community in Houston. I grew up in Orinda, California, fairly well-off white-collar community in the San Francisco Bay Area. Similar challenges that a lot of kids have, similar delusions for the parents. Now that you're a parent and you're seeing it from a parent's point of view, what do you think some of the big misconceptions are for how people end up living in neighborhoods like this?
Interesting. I haven't thought about that. I would venture that parents are trying to escape certain school districts. And I always say there's different kinds of problems in neighborhoods like this than there are in a more inner city school, for example. I think nowadays what we have to be really careful with is the comparison, especially when you're in a little bit wealthier area. The amount of people trying to keep up with the Joneses, to give their kids certain opportunities. They play 16 different sports instead of one a season. We tell our kids you get one sport each a season or one activity extracurricular. Just try to let them be kids. Like, I want them out having fun when the lights come on at nighttime, come in. But yeah, I think a lot of it is this whole notion of like keeping up with the Joneses, and I think the parents are doing it, and by transmutation they put it onto their kids.
Now, do you, with the people that you work with, and it'd be good to hear more about some of the coaching that you do on the side, but do you see that this mindset is a both source of success for a lot of people, but also a source of misery, leading to what they think they need in life, how that relates to them working, how that relates to them achieving, and how that relates to them feeling empty?
Yeah, I think a lot of times people look around, see what other people are doing, and they perceive what they're doing as successful, and they have no idea what's going on inside the four walls of their home. And so, they set out to have careers that afford them the opportunity to purchase things that they feel will fulfill them, if you will.
You know what fulfills me is very nice.
I know, I'm kind of jealous. Your questions are affording you more opportunity to crush the food.
I might have enough time to order a second portion this time.
But yeah, and so I think most people don't spend the time to determine what it is that they're passionate about. Honestly, what it is that they're good at. They just fall into these, following what they think will satisfy them and make them happy. And I think that they go out of their way to, we see it all the time. This whole notion of keeping up with the Joneses. We buy all these things to keep up with our peers. We brag about how successful our kids are, what's going on with our jobs, have fancy parties, etc. And I just think a lot of those people are unfulfilled. And I think it goes back to this idea of like external scorecard versus internal scorecard.
Yep.
And I think people need to spend more time really understanding what matters to them, what makes them happy, and then trying to align what they're doing with what those things are.
You have to have a high level of awareness to be able to understand that, because you have to kind of admit that you're a little bit of a fraud, right? Oh, I've been living this way, so people will perceive me as a certain way, but I'm not actually that way because it's not leading me to fulfillment. I think a lot of times people realize that in their mid-40s, kind of when they have midlife crises, and maybe people realize that in their early 30s or late 20s when their work is typically the hardest and most demanding, and they're like, I can't do this any longer. But I mean, what percentage of people do you think even have the introspective capacity to realize that the path that they're on will never lead them to fulfillment?
I think there is a number of people that inherently feel that, even if it's existential. It's the existential dread that they feel, a lot. It's not so much do they realize it, I think it's do they want to take action to step outside of that. And I think it's really hard once you have kids, once you have a family, once you have house note and car notes, etc., because now you're, essentially a slave to your comfort. And it's hard to have the courage to step outside of that and to chase something else. And I think that's why those stories are so compelling when we see them happen, because I think those people see those and they're like, oh man, that's amazing. And yet at the same time, they don't have the courage to go do that. Right.
Well, and I think it all comes back to being fit, right? My whole life and my whole shtick and the shortcuts that I tell people is you don't feel as much pressure to keep up with the Joneses if you look better than them with your shirt off. And I mean that. It sounds harsh. It sounds cliche, if you've been listening to me for a while, because I've said the same thing for years. But I don't own a car, and I don't feel embarrassed for not owning a car. I can afford to own a car. I just don't own one. And it's because with the way that I've structured my life, I obviously feel some pressure to keep up with my friends, but not through material possessions. Um, I, my source of pride in terms of what I can project to the outside world has much more to do with, I guess, my physical condition than things that I own. I want to own, a decent house, but that's more for me. Like, I don't think people would judge me if my house was like slightly less nice than it is. Um, so my main reason for wanting to own a nice house is like so I can be comfortable. My main reason for wanting a car is so I can get from point A to point B. Turns out I don't need to own a car for that. And the reason why I don't feel compelled to spend all this money on all these things is because enough people show me respect based on how I physically carry myself in the real world that I just don't feel a status deficit, right? I think most people are walking around with a constant status deficit. And just like if you're hungry for food because you haven't eaten in a couple of days, you're going to overeat that next meal. If you constantly have a status deficit because people don't respect you to the level that you feel like you need to, then you're going to go buy that car, right? That you maybe can't afford. You're going to go take on a mortgage that doesn't make sense for your income because someone's willing to give it to you. And then you end up just getting yourself more stress and feeling more pressure to keep up with an appearance that was designed to impress people that you don't actually like in the first place.
Right. Well, I think to your point, and this is stuff you talk about all the time too, but also, I always tell people if you're really trying to get quote unquote dialed in, which is kind of my shtick, is you should always start with the physicality. Always start with your body. Because if you look better, you're going to feel better, you're going to have more energy, you're going to be more successful at work, you're going to be more respected at work. For that matter, talking about coaching Little League Baseball, if you're jacked and you're coaching Little League Baseball, the kids are going to be more likely to listen to you than Joe Schmo, who's super overweight and can't keep up and can't do the exercises and the drills with the kids. So
it's not just the kids, it's everybody. So it's animals. Animals will respect you more too.
So, it's just like this thing that has a multitude of benefits across all of these other things that matter in life.
If you guys have questions, please drop them. Otherwise, we're just going to keep the dialogue going. So, how do companies make money off of this? How do you milk money out of insecure people? What do you see most commonly?
You mean in terms of like people as consumers, not as employees?
Well, everything. Like okay. I think once you understand, others can control you, and so I have an idea of what those puppet strings are. I have an idea of what products, what services, allow companies to control the purchases and the time spent by their consumers and their employees. But what do you see is most common?
Yeah, I guess I would honestly, it feels like something you thought through. So I'd like to hear your take on it. I think the big thing that companies do, and they should do, like, let's be clear about it. They should do this, is they're going to try to pay their employees the least amount that they can pay their employees such that you stay there in perpetuity, following all of their rules, adhering to all of the things that they want you to adhere to make money on their behalf. And let's be clear, if they're paying you something, they're making more money off of you than they are giving you in return. And they should. But, again, it goes back to if you don't have those insecurities, if you can go get another job, you're always in a position of power when, you're not relying on them for all of the things that you need to accomplish in life. So there are 9-to-5s, there are opportunities that are fulfilling, that are exciting, that can fulfill you in many ways, but you have to be willing to walk away to go get something better so that you have leverage, so that they will pay you what you are worth. And even then, it's still a deficit to what if you went out on your own. And I think that's something to acknowledge as well. But I'm curious what your levers are. Right.
So I think it's important to understand all human organizations benefit the founders and the people at the top. The reason why the people start organizations is because they personally want to gain from doing it, right? So, you might enjoy employing people at your company and like providing them a means to raise a family, but that's not the reason why you started a company. It may be a perk to you, but it's not the reason. The reason why you started a company is to make profits. And this is true for gangs, this is true for corporations. And so all street gangs will look to recruit a member that has two qualities, capability and insecurity. Because you want the junior members of your organization to be able to do functional work for you, but also not feel so confident to believe that they don't need you, or that they can start stealing your clients from you and go doing it on your own, because that it creates a lot of internal strife, and in gang territory it creates wars. And so, but white collar companies look for this too. They don't want super cocky junior employees, right? If you're a super cocky junior employee, they think, oh, he doesn't take instruction well, he's arrogant. They don't care that you don't take instruction well, that you're arrogant. They care that you threaten them, right? That's why people don't like cocky employees. It's because those cocky employees threaten the status quo. They threaten the power structure, and people in positions of power don't like it when others threaten their positions of power. And so you're selected for, like, the entire school system, the entire 16 years, 17 years of education that you have grades you and ranks you by your ability to be subordinate and by your ability to do homework for a third party. So by the time you get out of that system, you've come to rank your own ability in the world by your ability to do work for somebody else. And that's exactly what a company wants. They want you to judge your own value by the value that you deliver to them, right? Because the opposite would be you not care the value that you deliver to them, and you only care that the value that they deliver to you. That's the worst type of employee, because they're going to do the least amount of work and figure out how to get paid the most for it, right? They want the most selfless employees, the ones who will do the most work for the least compensation and not even think about it, right? So they want selfless employees who've gone through the school system, who aren't smart or confident enough to ask for a raise or believe that they're being undercompensated. If you think about ideal customers for luxury brands, they want people who don't feel confident in their own skin, who think they need to buy that Louis Vuitton belt, or they need to buy that Gucci handbag. They need to buy those Ferragamo shoes, right? So much so that they're willing to pay interest on a credit card, because they may not even have the cash in their bank account to buy it, but they need it so bad to interact with the world because they feel so naked without something to supplement what they're bringing to the world, that they'll go into debt to feel confident, to feel powerful, right? So people who lack confidence are the most valuable members of the economy, because they can be enslaved to powerful people, because they can be enslaved to the
No,
greatest
I'll
extent.
just say, I'll add an anecdotal story to that. So I'm, I share this to say that, like, this is institutional. It's happening. It's deliberate. If you don't think so, you're naive. When I was probably 26 years old, I started looking around in the city I live in for, like, what are the best employers, and Bain Consulting comes up every time on this list. So I end up getting a conversation with the Bain consultant, and he says, well, where'd you go to undergrad? And I told him, and he was like, oh, that doesn't work for us. It's not prestigious enough. We need to have all of our graduates from Ivy League schools or these types of schools, so that we can say, when we fill out this paperwork, 98% of our employees are Ivy League grads. That way we can charge way more, even though the quality of work is the same. And he said, well, you went to grad school. Where'd you go to grad school? Or no, I said, well, excuse me, I went to grad school. I went to A&M, And he said, oh, no, that's not going to work either. Once you've gone to grad school, we know that you're going to start thinking for yourself. And if you think for yourself, you're no good to us, because we want to train you to think like we want you to think. So I was too far along on the spectrum of where, like, I was not going to be controllable. And he said the quiet part out loud, which was really interesting and fascinating.
Yeah, because I made a post about this a few weeks ago. Like, consulting firms produce false intelligence. Like, the world doesn't structure information in a way that is inherently easy to digest through PowerPoint slides. Consultants structure information in a way that's easy to digest through PowerPoint slides. But in order to do that, they have to falsely piece data together. They have to connect dots imprecisely so that they can compress a complex reality into a lower precision medium that is an Excel sheet, so they can tell a story of what the company needs to do to make more profits. All of it's a language. All of it is, it's a language that's designed to protect the asses of the senior executives so that they can make controversial decisions and have some justification if they have to go to the board of directors for why they did what they did. It's not because the smartest people in the world think that this is the smartest thing to do. It's just the most justifiable thing to do, which is why you'll also see companies constantly all doing the same thing. Because look, a consulting firm says, hey, look, this is the number one growth opportunity. You might see this on Twitter, right? Where different agencies will say, oh, this is how you get more leads. Oh, this is how you get more clients. And all of a sudden, everybody's sending you DMs saying that they can copyright for you, right? Well, yeah, it's because like a few people realize, oh, I can make a lot of money selling courses, teaching other people how to copyright. Well, guess what? If everybody, it might work if nobody's doing it, but once everybody starts doing it, it doesn't work as well. And that's what you're doing when you're hiring a consultant, because don't think for 1 second that they're not taking that same PowerPoint that they spent 6 weeks and they're billing you $600,000 to deliver. When they go, they're going to sell that same project to another client. They're going to sit in. They're going to use 80% of the same PowerPoint. They're going to bill you for all of it.
They're going to tell you your brand awareness went from 14% to 25% based on the stuff that you did.
Right.
They're going to turn around and sit in the other, and they're going to tell your competitors, you know, they spent X amount and theirs is only 14%. But your competitor is learning the same thing. Theirs is now 25% and yours is 14%. So make no mistake, that's just made up numbers that are super unverifiable, that they're just telling you what you want to hear and you're paying them for it.
Well, that's if they're like low integrity. I think the lower integrity consultants will just make it up. The higher integrity consultants they'll just use a standard that they'll just pick standards that tell the story that they want to tell.
Sure.
Right. So I go to this, McKinsey diversity study that all these diversity and inclusion departments love referencing, talking about how diversity is so good at earnings because look at what the McKinsey study said. But if you actually understand how data is expressed and you look through the study, the only question you would have is, why would anybody use data to tell a story like this? Like, this is one of the most, it's like they're playing a game of Twister with data to try to paint a narrative that, if it were true, should be able to be communicated much more simply than telling me the chances of you being in the top performing quartile increase by 30% if your diversity score is in the upper half. It's like, why don't you just tell me like the correlation between one and the other? Like that's how most data, if you look at like medical data, even though correlation isn't causation, the starting point is this is the correlation, right? The starting point isn't people in this group are X% higher to be in some arbitrary quartile, right? It could be like cancer, right? So people in this group are X% more likely to have cancer, but they don't say people in this group are X% more likely to be in the top 25% of BMI. They don't say that. They draw a line that has an actual cutoff point, like they're likely to be obese, right? Not upper quartile of BMI.
Right.
So the reason why you would manipulate the data like this, in my view, is to tell a story that the data itself wouldn't tell by itself.
Makes sense to me.
So that's what you learn when you go to business school and when you go to Ivy League schools, is you learn the professional game of bullshit creation and bullshit merchant. You're a bullshit merchant. That's what it is.
Yep. Selling to insecure people.
Bullshit merchandising. That's what we're good at in the U.S. We became the best sales and marketing engine in the world. Land of opportunity.
Hard to argue with the results of capitalism.
That's right.
Still, U.S. is still the best place to make a lot of money, regardless of your background.
The sales
without question.
Sales and marketing engine of the world. But like I posted earlier, do not think for 1 second that simply being a subject matter expert will attract clients. You need to have subject matter competency and very, very high proficiency in marketing. right? And I say this because I have this contractor at my house who he's a handyman, but he's very competent in what he does. So much so where you wonder, why is this guy doing what he's doing? And I can tell that I think he's tormented by the fact that the market doesn't value him for the expertise that he has. And it's because he knows he's better than a lot of other people out there. But if he doesn't get that respect from the market, which the market isn't smart enough to realize the difference, right? So he's constantly going to be hitting his head against the wall if he expects people to change, because they never will. They're not, they're not carpentry experts. They're not painting experts. They're not experts in what he does. And so if he's constantly trying to, measure, if he's a lion and he's constantly trying to measure himself by his swimming ability, or he's constantly in a market that measures him by his swimming ability, he's going to be very, very frustrated. And I think that there's a lot of people in this world that have undiscovered or unappreciated expertise that think that, well, if only the world changed, people would discover me. And the reality is maybe that's true, but a lot of times you need to figure out how to improve your user interface so that the world can discover you.
So you're starting a holding company to acquire guys like him when?
Well, how did you know? Yes. In fact, I do want to create a Rolodex of underappreciated blue-collar service workers, because they're harder to find. And as old people become too old to work, and people in our generation who don't know how to fix anything but know how to spend money have problems. There's a South Park episode about this. They're not
guilty as charged.
They're not going to be able to find handymen. They're going to start having to pay them like $80 an hour. And so I might as well know these people and be a broker of some sorts.
Nice.
Cool. Well, if you guys have any questions, please leave them. We see one comment about people not liking cocky people in general because they think they're better than others and likely to take them for granted. That's true. That is true. People don't want to elevate you if they think that you're going to take them for granted, which is why the Dale Carnegie stuff about knowing people's names is incredibly helpful, because if you know people's names, they don't think that you're going to take them for granted. They're more likely to support you in your ascent through a corporate role or through some other professional endeavor. So these user interface polishing tools are very important. They should teach them to kids in college. It's not that complicated to explain the value of social skills. But as our economy becomes more and more complex, as people become further and further disconnected from the end product that they're buying, they need to trust the person who's presenting them the options. And so, at the end of the day, you need to be your own marketer if you want to get respect for what you do, whether you start your own company or not, right? Most people who are experts never get recognized for their expertise. I swear that I've been around so many high IQ people, and so many of them are dysfunctional because they can't manage stress appropriately, and their lives just end up being monstrosities of wasted talent that could have been repurposed for something interesting. But I don't know how your experience has been. I really think that 4 out of 5 high IQ people just end up wasting their ability.
Yeah, I think it's cliche at this point, but it's true that like the lower IQ person that will take action quickly, make the mistake, pivot, learn from the mistake, and go, will invariably end up ahead of the high IQ person that is terrified to try, that gets analysis by paralysis, doesn't do anything, and then to your point, like, is frustrated that people don't realize how smart they are. Well, you can't just tell us, you have to show us by doing things. So,
and assume that we're not very smart.
Right.
So that's the thing, is like, and one thing that I've learned as a creator over the last few years is people's attention isn't free, right? We have to give you guys value for you to tune in to listen to us. And if we don't, you guys tune out. So your time,
the value is the handsomeness, obviously.
Right. Your time isn't free. And so don't assume that the time of your buyers is free. You need to cherish every second of attention that you get from them and tell your story in that short time period. And if you don't tell your story in that short time period, then how are they going to respect you? How are they going to justify seeing you as an expert?
Well, and I'll add to, if you want to make a name for yourself in the creator economy, you have to be prolific, more so than you think. Like, you will think you are being annoying. Just push through that, because there's so many streams of consciousness that people are following at any given time. They're not seeing you as much as you think they are. You have to be prolific. You have to be everywhere.
Yes. Yes. Nobody thinks about you as much as you think about yourself. So you need to be annoying in order for them to think about you enough. On that note, thank you for tuning in to the Wednesday edition of Lunch and Live Streaming. Check back Friday. I don't know where I'm going to be. I'm not going to be cooking again because I'll still be in the Houston area heading back to Austin. But 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central, 11 a.m. Pacific, every Wednesday, Friday. Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks for having me.